I stared at the contract lying on our dining room table, my coffee growing cold beside it. James was still talking, gesturing excitedly about the beach house he'd already picked out in Malibu. But all I could focus on was his signature at the bottom of the page, right next to where he'd forged mine. "This is going to change everything, Olivia," he said, reaching for my hand. "No more 18-hour workdays, no more stress about funding rounds. We're set for life." My name is Olivia Chen, and at 36, I thought I knew my husband. We'd built quantum tech together from nothing, working out of our garage for 2 years before landing our first major client. Or at least, that's what James had always claimed. The truth was more complicated. "When did you negotiate this deal?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. My father had taught me that, always get all the facts before showing your hand. "Last month, while you were in Seattle." James's smile faltered slightly. "I know I should have told you, but with everything going on with your dad, I didn't want to add to your stress." My father had been dying of pancreatic cancer. I'd spent his last weeks by his side, holding his hand as he slipped away. Meanwhile, my husband had been secretly selling our company to our biggest competitor. "5 million seems low," I said, taking a sip of my now cold coffee, considering our latest valuation was 12 million. James waved dismissively. "That valuation was optimistic. Besides, this is cash in hand, not theoretical value. And Global Tech is throwing in stock options too." I nodded slowly, thinking about the real documents locked in my home office safe. The ones that show I actually owned 75% of Quantum Tech, not the 30% James believed. The ownership structure had been my father's idea, his last gift to me, along with a warning I hadn't understood until now. "Trust is good," he'd said, "but controlled is better." "Have you told the team yet?" I asked, watching James's face carefully. "Not yet. I thought we could announce it together at Monday's all-hands meeting." He grinned, clearly pleased with himself. "Everyone's going to be thrilled. The severance packages are really generous." My stomach clenched. Severance packages? "Well, yeah." He looked at me like I was being naive. "Global Tech has their own development team. They're buying our technology, not our people." 47 people. That's how many employees had trusted us with their careers, had poured their hearts into building quantum tech. James was ready to throw them away without a second thought. "I need some air," I said, standing abruptly. "I'm going for a walk." "Don't be long," he called after me. "We have dinner reservations at 7 to celebrate." Once outside, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who'd known about my father's suspicions. My best friend and Quantum Tech's lead counsel, Maya Rodriguez. "He did it," I said as soon as she answered. "He tried to sell the company." Maya's sharp intake of breath crackled through the speaker. "Without board approval? Without your signature?" "He forged my signature on the contract. I'm looking at it right now." I sent her a photo of the document. Dad was right about everything. The offshore accounts too. I'm still gathering evidence, but probably. I discovered suspicious transfers to a Cayman Islands account 2 weeks ago. Money moving out of the company in small increments that added up to over $2 million. "Okay," Maya said, her lawyer voice kicking in. "Don't let him know you suspect anything. I'll call Judge Martinez and get an emergency injunction to block the sale. Then we need tow." She stopped suddenly, and I heard papers shuffling. "Olivia, when did he say he negotiated this deal?" "Last month, while I was in Seattle with Dad." "Why?" "Because I'm looking at his travel records right now. He wasn't meeting with Global Tech last month. He was in Cancun." My hand tightened around the phone. Cancun. With someone named Rebecca Palmer. Multiple hotel charges, dinner reservations for 2. "Olivia, I'm so sorry." The pieces clicked into place. The late nights at the office, the mysterious business trips, the way he'd been pushing for this sale. This wasn't just about money. James was planning his exit, not just from the company, but from our marriage. "Get me everything you can on Rebecca Palmer," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. "And Maya? Thank you for having my back through all of this." "Always," she replied firmly. "No one steals my best friend's company and gets away with it." I ended the call and looked back at our house. The home we bought with my father's investment money, though James had always claimed it was from his savings. How many other lies had I believed? My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. 7 p.m. celebration dinner at Luciano's. I smiled grimly. Oh, we'd celebrate all right, just not the way James was expecting. Back inside, I found him in our bedroom, humming as he changed for dinner. Feel better? He asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Much, I said, watching his reflection. Actually, I had an idea. Why don't we announce the sale tonight? I could invite Maya and the other board members to join us at Luciano's. Make it a real celebration. James turned, his expression flickering briefly before settling into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The board? Honey, we don't need to involve them yet. This should be our moment. You're right, I conceded, picking up my phone. Though I should at least invite Maya. She's put so much work into the company. No, he said sharply, then caught himself. I mean, let's keep it just us tonight. We can tell everyone else tomorrow. I nodded, pretending not to notice how his hands shook slightly as he finished with his tie. Whatever you think is best. He had no idea that Maya was already setting things in motion, that by morning his carefully constructed plan would start unraveling thread by thread. Ready to go? He asked, holding out his hand. I took it, feeling the wedding ring that had once meant everything to me. Ready. Luciano's was exactly as pretentious as I remembered, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. James ordered an expensive bottle of champagne, beaming at me across the table like he'd just given me the world instead of trying to steal it. To our future, he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, watching the bubbles rise. To getting what we deserve. My phone buzzed silently in my lap. A message from Maya. Emergency injunction granted. Sheriff will serve papers to Global Tech tonight. Also, you need to see what I found about Rebecca Palmer. Everything okay? James asked, noticing my expression. Perfect, I smiled, slipping the phone back into my purse. Just a work email. Soon you won't have to worry about those anymore, he said, reaching for my hand. We can travel, maybe buy a vacation home. I was thinking Cancun would be nice. I nearly choked on my champagne. Cancun? That's specific. I heard it's beautiful this time of year, he said smoothly, but I caught the slight tension in his jaw. You know what else is beautiful? I asked, keeping my tone light. The view from our company's new satellite office, the one you approved last week without consulting me. He froze momentarily. Oh, that? Just some preliminary paperwork. Nothing's final. Really? Because Maya showed me the lease agreement this morning. 3 years, $2 million. That's a big commitment for a company you're selling. James's smile faltered. I can explain. Let me guess. I cut in. It's not what it looks like. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and paled slightly. I need to take this, he said, standing abruptly. Business call. I watched him hurry toward the restaurant's entrance, then pulled out my own phone and opened the file Maya had just sent. There it was, proof that the satellite office wasn't for quantum tech at all. James had leased it under a new company name, Palmer Technologies, named after Rebecca Palmer, the woman he'd been meeting in Cancun. A few minutes later, James returned to the table, his face ashen. We need to go. Now. Everything okay? I asked innocently. What about dessert? Something's come up at the office, he said, already signaling for the check. A problem with the servers. I knew exactly what had come up. Global Tech's lawyers would have just received the injunction blocking the sale. James's perfectly planned exit strategy was beginning to crumble. The drive home was tense, with James making frantic phone calls while I pretended to check my email. In reality, I was watching a series of text updates from Maya. Global Tech CEO is furious. James' offshore accounts frozen. Rebecca Palmer's real identity confirmed. She's not just his mistress. That last message made me sit up straighter. Not just his mistress. I typed back. Maya's response came quickly. She's Global Tech's VP of Acquisitions. This wasn't just an affair. It was corporate espionage. The pieces were falling into place. James hadn't just been planning to leave me. He'd been working with our competitor to steal our company's technology. The sale was just a cover for transferring our intellectual property to Global Tech. As we pulled into our driveway, James was still on the phone, his voice rising in panic. What do you mean they got an injunction? Who could have? No, that's impossible. I have all the necessary signatures. I got out of the car and headed inside, leaving him to his crisis. In our home office, I opened the safe and pulled out the real company documents, the ones showing my majority ownership, the board resolutions James had never bothered to read carefully, and most importantly, the evidence of his fraud that I'd been gathering for months. What did you do? I turned to find James standing in the doorway, his face contorted with rage. What did I do? I repeated calmly. I protected my company, the company my father helped build that you tried to steal. Your company? He scoffed. I built quantum tech from nothing. You were just the money. Is that what you told Rebecca? I asked, watching his face pale. When you were meeting her in Cancun, planning how to sell our technology to global tech. He took a step forward, but I held up my hand. Before you say anything else, I continued, you should know that Maya has copies of everything. The forged documents, the offshore accounts, your meetings with global tech. Corporate espionage is a serious crime, James. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice shook slightly. I opened my laptop and turned it toward him, showing the surveillance photos of him and Rebecca in Cancun, the bank transfers, the secret communications with global tech. Did you really think my father would leave me unprotected? I asked quietly. He knew what you were, even before I did. That's why he made sure I had controlling interest in the company. James lunged for the laptop, but I was faster, stepping back as Maya and two police officers appeared in the doorway behind him. James Thompson, one of the officers, said, "You're under arrest for fraud and attempted corporate espionage." As they led him away in handcuffs, he kept looking back at me, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You're nothing without me." I watched from the window as the police car drove away, feeling strangely empty. The man I'd loved, the life I thought we built together. It had all been a carefully constructed lie. Maya touched my shoulder gently. "You okay?" I nodded, picking up the family photo from my desk, the last one taken before my father got sick. Dad tried to warn me about James. I should have listened sooner. "You listened when it mattered," she said firmly. "Now, want to hear what else I found about Rebecca Palmer and global tech? Because this goes deeper than we thought." The next morning, Quantum Tech's offices were buzzing with nervous energy. I called an emergency all-hands meeting, and now faced 47 anxious faces as I stood at the front of our main conference room. "By now, you've probably heard rumors," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Yes, James has been arrested. Yes, there was an attempted sale to global tech. But no, none of you are losing your jobs." The relief in the room was palpable, but I wasn't finished. "What you don't know is that for the past 6 months, James has been working with global tech to steal our technology. He tried to sell the company for less than half its value while transferring our core IP through backdoor channels." Maya stepped forward, pulling up a presentation on the screen behind me. "We've uncovered evidence of systematic corporate espionage," she explained. "James and Rebecca Palmer, Global Tech's VP of Acquisitions, created a shadow company to funnel our technology and client data to our competitors." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. These people had trusted James, had believed in his leadership. Finding out he'd betrayed not just me, but all of them, hit hard. "There's more," I continued once the noise died down. "We discovered that at least 3 other tech startups were targeted by the same scheme. Global Tech would identify promising companies, insert themselves through various means, usually romantic relationships with key executives, and then systematically strip the companies of their assets." I clicked to the next slide, showing the pattern of failed startups in Global Tech's wake. But they made one crucial mistake with us. They underestimated how many safeguards my father put in place before he died. The next few hours were a blur of questions, explanations, and reassurances. By the end of the day, our entire team knew the truth and, more importantly, understood their role in what came next. Because this wasn't just about saving quantum tech anymore. We had a chance to expose a corporate conspiracy that had destroyed dozens of smaller companies. That evening, as I sat in my office reviewing the evidence we gathered, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen?" a woman's voice said when I answered. "This is Rebecca Palmer. We need to talk." I put the call on speaker so Maya could hear. "I think your lawyers would advise against that, Ms. Palmer." "My lawyers don't know I'm calling," she replied, her voice tense. "Look, you have no idea what you're dealing with. This goes way beyond James or Global Tech. Then enlighten me. She paused and I could hear traffic in the background. Not over the phone. Meet me at the Riverside Park in an hour. Come alone. I looked at Maya, who was already shaking her head. It's a trap, she mouthed. Why should I trust you? I asked Rebecca. Because I have proof that your father's death wasn't natural, she said quietly. The cancer diagnosis, it was engineered. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. What? 1 hour. The bench by the fountain. Don't be late. The line went dead. Maya was already on her phone, calling her contacts in law enforcement. Within 30 minutes, we had plainclothes officers positioned throughout the park and a wire hidden under my jacket. Rebecca was already at the bench when I arrived, looking nothing like the polished executive from the surveillance photos. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her hair disheveled. They're going to kill me, she said without preamble. Once they realize I'm talking to you, I'm dead. Who's they? She pulled out a USB drive with shaking hands. It's all here, the whole operation. Global Tech isn't just stealing technology. They're eliminating anyone who might expose them. Your father figured it out. That's why they had to move quickly with James. I felt sick. Are you saying they murdered my father? They have people inside pharmaceutical companies, hospitals. They can make anything look natural. She pressed the USB drive into my hand. James doesn't know the half of it. He thought this was just corporate espionage, but it's... A sharp crack split the air. Rebecca's eyes went wide, then blank. She slumped forward as screams erupted around us. The next few hours were chaos. Police swarming the park, reporters gathering at the edges, Maya pulling strings to keep my name out of the immediate coverage. The USB drive contained everything: internal emails, financial records, medical documents. A conspiracy so vast it seemed impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of Quantum Tech's scheme again, but this time with federal agents beside me. The investigation is ongoing, I explained, but arrests are being made. Global Tech's entire executive board, hospital administrators, even some government officials who helped cover it up. James had already pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for his testimony. He would serve time, but more importantly, he would help bring down the people who had murdered my father. Maya touched my arm gently. Ready for the press conference? I nodded, straightening my jacket. Outside, cameras waited to hear the story of how a small tech company had uncovered one of the biggest corporate conspiracies in recent history. But first, I had one stop to make. At my father's grave, I placed fresh flowers and the news article announcing Global Tech's downfall. You tried to protect me, I whispered. Now I'm finishing what you started. The company would recover. We'd already landed 3 major contracts from Global Tech's former clients. Our team was stronger than ever, united by what we'd overcome together. As for me, I was different now. Stronger, yes, but also more cautious. Trust, as my father had said, was good, but control and justice were better. The headlines would call it a story of corporate greed and betrayal, but for me, it was simpler than that. It was about a daughter finally understanding her father's last lesson, about a woman reclaiming her power, and about truth finally coming to light. James had tried to steal my company, but he'd given me something instead: the chance to expose a corruption that had cost lives, including my father's. Sometimes I realize the greatest victories come from our deepest losses, and sometimes justice wears many faces.